Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. HDM here with a new and extremely off-meta build for you. This is a unique hybrid Warden setup using Frost Staff on the front bar, bow on the back bar, and a powerful mix of both stamina and magicka-based skills that's actually really effective. This build is great for soloing, it's great for playing with a companion, even a group, and it's just a lot of fun to play. As usual, we'll be going over everything you need to know to make it work, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. Alright everybody, we are back on the Warden with an updated hybrid build for the Elder Scrolls Online. This is going to be a pretty unique update for this build. We've switched over to Frost Staff front bar, bow back bar, and this is just a lot of fun to play. So let's go ahead and dive into the buff stats here on the build. Checking out the character sheet. Got about 24k max magicka, 24k max stamina, and a whopping 28,000 max health. Looks pretty good. You can check out our recoveries are very good as well. Weapon and spell damage currently about 3,700. This gets over 5,000 when you are fully buffed with all of your procs and things like that. Our weapon and spell critical also go up, I believe, over 60% once we are fully buffed as well, so we'll check that out in a minute. Now, in terms of how you can set up your attributes, remember for a hybrid build, I recommend getting your maximum magicka and stamina as close to each other as possible, as equal as possible. So this will depend completely on your race and the glyphs that you're running, but currently I'm at 41 magicka, 23 stamina. That's how I made those equal. For the food on this build, I think Bewitched Sugar Skulls is a really nice option. This gives you tons of max stats, health, stamina, and magicka, plus a little bit of extra health recovery for survivability. It's a really good option. Mundus Stone is going to be the Thief. This just gets us actually a very good crit chance, over 60% crit chance. Like I said, when we're fully buffed on a hybrid build, for both weapon and spell critical, is pretty darn good. And we'll talk about some of the other buffs we have here in just a minute. But let's talk about the race for your hybrid Warden here. I want something totally off meta. Shouldn't be a surprise to you guys. This build is extremely off meta. And so I'm using Wood Elf. Kind of just, I thought it fit with the Warden pretty well. It has like that spinner feel to it. Now you do get some nice passives on Wood Elf, I will say. Hunter's Eye gives you some bonus physical and spell pen, which is nice. You get extra movement speed. Stamina recovery is actually pretty useful on the hybrid. And then, of course, we get the max stamina. So this just means, as you saw with the attributes, we need to pump a little bit more points into magicka to equal things out. So you can definitely make this work. It's not ideal. I would say Dark Elf probably would be very strong on this build. High Elf even. Khajiit. Actually, I was thinking Redguard would work pretty well also because we have a lot of weapon skills, and that extra cost reduction that Redguards get would be very good on this setup. But basically, bottom line, you can make any race in ESO work. So whatever you prefer, go ahead and do that. Then lastly, in terms of the potions, I'm just using Tri-Stat potions. You guys know this is what I always recommend for hybrid builds. It gives you stamina, magicka, and health back, which is extremely useful. Now, let's talk about the gear sets, which are changing as well. We've gone with Frostbite for our first main damage set. This is an overland set. It's light armor. Comes from the Blackwood chapter, so it's quite easy to get, and it's quite powerful actually on a Warden. So what this does, it gives you weapon and spell damage, gives you crit chance, and it gives you a lot of bonus damage when it comes to your frost abilities. Check this out, 8% flat bonus damage to all of your frost abilities. This is going to count for our main DPS skill, some of our back bar dots as well. And we can also get up to 6% additional bonus damage, so about 14% bonus damage if your enemies are chilled and afflicted with Minor Brittle. Minor Brittle is a status effect that increases target's critical damage taken, and Wardens apply this all the time. So you're pretty much guaranteed the max value of damage here. So it is quite nice. You can see we get the hybrid stats, weapon and spell damage, critical chance as well. So it's actually functioning really good. It increases our damage quite a bit. I'm running this mostly on the body. I believe I do have 5 pieces on the body here. I've gone with kind of a light armor approach, 5 light and 2 medium. Just because I think the light armor passives are slightly better for hybrids. You get the increased penetration and the increased crit chance. So we're running the Frostbite hat, the shoulders, waist, hands, and feet. Divines if you can get it. And then we're using the Tri-Stat enchants. Now that's not completely necessary. They are a little bit expensive. So if you want, you can run either magicka or stamina. Just remember to try to equal out those reserves. So you have about 24k of each resource. And you'll be good to go. The Tri-Stat enchant just really gives us extra health. Now, for our second 5P set, I went with yet another damage set on this build that's giving us a lot of critical chance, as well as bonus critical damage. And this is going to be Zogvin's Warband. This is a dungeon set with some pretty impressive stats now, especially for hybrids. So you get 2 critical chance bonuses, you get an offensive penetration bonus, which is pretty rare. And for the 5-piece here, when you deal critical damage, you gain a stack of precision, increasing your critical chance by 177 for 5 seconds. And at max stacks, which is 10, you get the minor force buff, which increases your critical damage done by 10%. So basically, as long as you're doing damage, your crit chance is going to increase, and your crit damage is also going to increase. Now, I thought this was really good on this build because I'm running a lot of skills. I didn't have room for a minor force buff like Trap or Channeled Acceleration. So to get that buff for free, just doing what I'm going to do anyways, which is deal damage, is actually really nice. So Zogvin's Warband, great set for any offensive build in the game. I definitely recommend you pick it up if you have not yet. The way that we are running this currently is 2 pieces on the body and then 3 pieces on the jewelry. Now, this will depend, obviously, on the drops that you get. You can run 5 pieces on the body. That's totally fine. I think you'll have a little bit less damage, but it might be easier to pick up the body pieces than the jewelry pieces. So just keep that in mind. But I am running the medium chest here, medium legs, and then 3 pieces on the jewelry. Now, speaking of jewelry, I have 1 bloodthirsty, 2 infused here. So transmuting these is going to be ideal for increased damage. Because I am a Wood Elf, I have that stamina recovery buff. I decided to go with a Magicka recovery glyph on the jewelry just to help balance things a little bit more. And then 1 spell damage, 1 weapon damage. So there you go. That is the second 5-piece set. Now for the final 2 slots, you can see that I'm not using a monster set. I'm actually using Frostbite on the head and shoulders. And the reason for that is I think this build can really benefit from some arena weapons. Now, I know not everybody has these. I'll give you some alternate options in a second. But especially for a Frost Staff DPS build, the Master's Destruction Staff is really good. Check out what this does here. Perfected obviously gives you a little bit of extra weapon and spell damage. That's not a big deal. But look at the 2-piece bonus here on the bottom. Reduces the cost of your Destructive Touch, which is our main DPS skill, by 10% and increases your weapon and spell damage by 600 for 4 seconds. That's an insane amount of weapon and spell damage just for using our main DPS skill. And you get both weapon and spell damage. So this is amazing for a hybrid setup. I could not resist using this, you guys. And it is very good. I went with Precise as the trait. I think that's ideal. Also, I think an Absorb Magic enchant is going to be pretty good. Now, since we're using an arena weapon on the front bar, I figured, hey, why not use one on the back bar as well? Maelstrom Bow, since we have the bow back bar, it's going to provide a lot of bonus damage. From this 2-piece set, this gives you bonus crit chance and extra damage on your volley. Obviously, bow build, we're going to be using volley anyways to use the infused back bar glyph. This ends up being about 500, 550 extra weapon and spell damage as well. You can see just by running those 2 sets with the right traits, with the right glyphs, easily about 1,200, 1,300 extra weapon and spell damage for this hybrid build. It's a lot. Now, as I said, if you don't have access to arena weapons, perfectly fine. This build would be great with a couple of monster sets thrown in instead. So you could run like Frostbite, Destruction Staff, Frostbite Bow, and then for your head and shoulders, something like Ice Heart if you want to play off the ice theme of this build. Plus get an extra damage shield, a little bit of extra survivability. That would be really nice as well. So that covers the basic loadout. Again, we've got Frostbite, we've got Zogvin's, the Master's Ice Staff, and then Maelstrom Bow. If you'd like to see some other options, I will have those listed in the written guide. So check that out if you're interested. Now, moving right along to the skills on this build. Really interesting setup. Remember, on a hybrid, you're trying to mix stamina and magic abilities to get the best balance of resources, but also to get all of the buffs and debuffs that you need. So starting on our front bar, this is our main DPS bar, the Frost Staff. We've got Elemental Drain. This is mainly for solo. You will want it for Major Breach, especially for dungeons to debuff the armor of those enemies, and also for Minor Magicka Steal, so this gives you a good bit of magic back. It's also free to cast, fairly long duration, so it's a nice debuff to maintain. And then next up, we have one of our main DPS skills, actually, Subterranean Assault. This comes from Animal Companions. That is the second ability here. Now, I went with the Stamina Morph because my main DPS on the Frost Staff costs Magicka. So I basically have one Magicka DPS, one Stamina DPS skill that I'm using on the front bar. It's a nice balance. Plus, I do like how this recasts. So basically, you cast it once, it fires off after 3 seconds, and then it fires off another time after an additional 3 seconds. So it's really easy just to throw this in once on your front bar rotation, do a bunch of damage with our Frost Staff, and then cast it again before swapping to the back bar. It plays really nice on this build. So that's what I would recommend there. Next up, we've got Fetcher Infection. This is just a nice damage over time, you guys. Tons of magic damage over 10 seconds, plus a nice debuff. Minor vulnerability is going to be great for bosses. I would say this is flexible. You don't necessarily need the extra damage all the time. So some things you could put here would be like an extra heal, for example. Something like Living Trellis can be really helpful for you. If you're using a companion, it can be great for them. You can also run something like the Light Armor Damage Shield for a little bit better survivability. That works well. But like I said, for damage, definitely Fetcher Infection is very good. Next, let's talk about our main DPS skill that we've been talking about this whole time. Frost Reach comes from the Destruction Staff skill line. It's your third ability there, and this got buffed recently. It used to be mainly for tanks, and now this more specifically, Destructive Reach, can actually function as a DPS skill. They increase the damage. It always applies an elemental status effect. Has a reduced cost now, and it weaves really nicely into a rotation. So definitely check it out for that sort of Ice Mage feel on the front bar. It's a good DPS skill now. Last normal ability is going to be Camouflage Hunter, and I wanted some just passive stats here. This comes from the Fighters Guild, by the way. That's your second to last ability. So what this gives me is a couple things here. Number one, it gives me Major Savagery, so that's about 12% bonus weapon critical. This is a very important buff to maintain, especially for hybrids. Since you need both sources of crit chance, it's a little bit difficult. Camouflage Hunter is a good option for this. And also it gives us Minor Berserk. Another great reason. This increases our damage done by 5% as long as we are behind or to the side of an enemy. So basically, you're getting 2 buffs for the price of 1. I know we could run something like Bird of Prey in this spot. A lot of Warden builds use this skill, but this only gives you Minor Berserk. It doesn't give you the Major Savagery, so that's why I went with Camouflage Hunter instead. Finally, for the ultimate here, you have a lot of options. I just like using the Bear Pet. You can use the Magic or the Stamina Morph. It really doesn't make a huge difference. Went with the Magic Morph on this version. It's called Eternal Guardian. Does magic damage, does an AoE stun, knockdown, and some good execute damage once your target is below 25% health. So that is the front bar. Let's switch now to the bow. Talk about those damage over time abilities, starting with Winter's Revenge. It's our second ability from the Winter's Embrace skill line. This does really good damage, you guys. It also is going to give us a higher chance to apply that shield status effect. Remember, the Frostbite set kind of depends on shield and Minor Brittle being on the target. This is going to help with that a lot. So make sure you throw this into your rotation. Combined with that, we have Arrow Barrage. That's our bow ability. Second skill here. Now you can use either morph. I went with Arrow Barrage for a little bit more damage. Endless Hail will give you a longer duration. You can play around with both versions, see what you prefer. Then our last bow skill here, Poison Injection. More damage over time. This is a single target skill, and it does do bonus damage the less health your enemy has. So got a lot of nice bow damage coming here from the back bar. And then finally, just 2 buffs here. First one is called Lotus Blossom. This comes from Green Balance. And this is another crit buff. This gives us Major Prophecy and also some nice healing when we do light or heavy attacks. So basically, I'm getting Major Prophecy, 12% critical chance from this skill all the time. And then also getting the 12% weapon critical from Camo Hunter on the front bar. So that's why that's important. And then Blue Betty is just our damage buff. This comes from Animal Companions. Down here, this gives us Magicka over 25 seconds, plus Major Brutality and Sorcery. So this is great for hybrids. It also lets us remove 1 negative effect every 5 seconds. You can go with the Stamina Morph. I just felt like since our main DPS spammable skill was Magicka based, I wanted a little bit more Magicka back. So that's why I went with this Morph. And then, of course, you need to double slot the bear. You're going to use the ultimate here. You don't have to. You could use like the Destruction Staff ultimate on your front bar. Could use something like Permafrost or the Healing Trees ultimate on the back bar, depending on how you play, if you're in a group or not. May change your ultimate choices there. But that covers the skills. Let's do a quick rotation. I'm going to use a companion here just to make things a little bit more clear so you can see the rotation. But basically, you're starting on your back bar with your 2 buffs that we went over. And then throw down all your dots. Front bar, debuff with Elemental Drain. Throw on your Sub-Assault. Your damage over time, and then spam that Frost Staff. If you do that a few times, you'll go back to the back bar, redo your dots, redo your buffs. Don't forget to use your ultimate when that is ready to go. And you can see before swapping to the back bar, you Sub-Assault. Because again, that does have about a 6-second duration. So pretty much times in perfectly. Do one more rotation here. I'm not going to bother rebuffing this time. There you go. Super easy. Now, I do want to show some of the passives here, which I think are important. In Animal, Companions Bond with Nature gives you some healing back. That's a good one. Savage Beast gives you bonus ultimate. Very good as well. Flourish gives you bonus recovery. This is very important on the hybrid setup. And then, of course, Advanced Species gives you bonus damage. This is good as well. Make sure you pick up all the passives in this skill line. Now, Green Balance, we are using some heals here, either Lotus Blossom or Lotus and Living Trellis. So you will get some good benefit from these. The best one, though, is Maturation. This gives you and your group minor toughness, so that's about 10% bonus max health for 20 seconds. It's a really good buff. Finally, Winter's Embrace, I decided really not to use much of these, though you can get some of these without having any abilities slotted. For example, Glacial Presence increases your damage by another 10% against shield targets. That's going to work really well on this build. As well as Piercing Cold, we do have magic abilities, we do have frost damage abilities, so you get a nice bonus there. Make sure to pick that up. And of course, you will want all of your Destruction Staff passives, all of your bow passives, and then probably both light and medium armor. Like I said, you can run this as a medium armor build or a light armor build. That's going to depend on which drops you're getting from those sets that we talked about earlier. Light armor is probably my preferred option here. You can see you get weapon and spell critical, and you get a lot of physical and spell penetration. This ends up being really helpful on the build overall. And not just that, we have more cost reduction for magic abilities. So for example, running 5 pieces of light gives you 20% bonus magical recovery, which is huge, and 10% bonus cost reduction. That's really going to be helpful on this build. Now, like I said, medium armor is fine as well. You'll get bonus critical damage done. You'll get bonus weapon and spell damage, which are good as well. Not as good as light armor, but still pretty good for a hybrid setup. In terms of guild skills, we're really not using much of anything here, so you don't need to worry about those. Though Undaunted is good, specifically Undaunted Metal. 4% bonus max health, stamina, and magicka is pretty helpful on this build. Of course, we will want to use all our racial skills we mentioned earlier, and then alchemy, medicinal use to make those potions last as long as possible. Quickly, let's talk about champion points. This build is fairly straightforward. And of course, if you'd like to see a complete breakdown of 300, 600, 900, and 1200 champion points, you can find those in the written guide. Link is in the description. Now, in the green tree, we're going to go with Steed's Blessing, Treasure Hunter, Rationer, and Liquid Efficiency for our 4 slotted stars. In the blue tree, we're going with Deadly Aim, so that's single target damage, Mastered Arms for direct damage, Thaumaturge, of course, for the damage over time, and then either Fighting Finesse or Backstabber. Now, if you are playing solo with a companion or with a competent group and tank, then Backstabber is going to be a little bit better in terms of overall damage. If you don't have any of those, then probably Fighting Finesse is going to be better overall. Now, in terms of passives here, definitely get Precision, get Piercing, and then if you have enough CP, you can actually get both sides of this tree here, Battle Mastery and Flawless Ritual. If you don't have enough, I would prioritize Flawless Ritual, just because you want that shield status effect as much as possible. Of course, don't forget these passive stats here, Tireless, Discipline, and Eldritch Insight. I would get both on any hybrid build. That's free stats, that's always good. And then some defensive stats here. Quick Recovery, and then definitely Preparation would be the best in this area. Finally, for the red tree, pretty straightforward. A Rejuvenation for the recovery, Fortified for the armor, and Boundless Vitality for the health. Then I'm going to work my way up. Pick up Hero's Vigor as well. More health is always good. And then you can go with either Siphoning Spells or Bloody Renewal. Tend to go with Siphoning Spells a little bit more often just because we have more Magicka abilities. Last but not least, in terms of armor styles, I'm actually using everything that comes with those armor sets. So both Frostbite and Zogvin's. The only thing I've actually changed here is the headpiece. I believe it's actually the same as Zogvin's Warband, or at least very similar. That's going to be Cold Snap Goblin. All right, everybody, with that said, that's going to wrap up our unique hybrid Warden build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Of course, if you did, do us a favor, crush that like button. It definitely is a huge help for the channel. Much appreciated. Now, if you have any questions on the build or you'd like to see more detailed options, we have all that for you in the written guide. Talking about alternate gear sets, alternate skills, the complete champion point breakdown for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP, as well as the full companion tank build for Bastion that you saw in this gameplay. That definitely is going to make a big difference as well. So if you'd like to see any of that, check it out. Link is in the description down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.